So, email marketing 201. So, pleasure to be here today and to talk to you about email marketing. So, my background is I have spent about 9 years growth marketing experience. So, I've sent millions of emails over the years for companies that are B2C, B2B, cold emails, marketing emails, a variety. And today I'm just going to take you through email marketing lifecycle emails that you could think about and you can use. We're going to discuss deliverability and email reputation and why that is so important. We're going to touch upon some metrics as well. And then we're also going to look at some cold outreach scripts that you can have and you can go about using. So excited about today. Hopefully you find it useful. Let's get into it. All right, so why does email marketing matter? Well, for every dollar that you spend on email marketing, you can expect an average of around $32, right? The same for B2B, 83% of marketeers are using email newsletters for content marketing. So when looking at emails, a lot of the time, people just think about emails in regards to sales. So can it drive me more revenue? Can it drive me more sales? Whilst that is a great foundation, and that's what you should be looking to do with email, there's a variety of other things you can use emails for. One of the main things is to build relationships with your user base. These are going to be people who are going to potentially buy from you, sign up and use your services. And so you want to have a good relationship with them. So for example, today we've put on an event and email could have been one of the methods in which we've put this message out. You can also use email for referrals. So if you have a happy user or you have someone who has been using your product for some time, you can communicate to them using email, right? Same with testimonials as well. And finally, and one that is not used as much, customer development. So if you're in an early stage of your business, and even at a later stage, you can use email to build relationships with those early customers to find out, do you enjoy the product? Are there things that could be improved? Use customer development and use email to try and do customer development and improve your product and make it more tailored for your particular audience. So when thinking about emails, you want to make your emails match your funnel. So we always hear about this marketing funnel. So we have awareness, consideration, conversion, and then at the bottom we have loyalty and advocacy. So what you want to be doing is getting users and send emails to users at different stages in the funnel, right? So you can have people move in right at conversion at the bottom of the funnel, maybe just to go and buy. At the top of the funnel, you may be doing leads nurturing, which you may hear if you're doing, say, B2B, where you're trying to push people through the funnel. And so I'm going to take you through kind of different look at email marketing and how you can communicate to users in a funnel. So rather than it being a funnel, it's a bit of a graph. But you can see you've got new customers at the start, and there are a variety of emails that you could send to them. So for example, if you're looking in the context of e-commerce, right, you can have a browse abandonment. So someone being on your site, for example, you can send them an email to say, why don't you purchase the product that you were looking at? Then if you've got someone who's maybe signed up, is a new subscriber, you can send them messages or a welcome email to try and push them further through the funnel. Then you might have the cart abandonment. So abandoned cart, someone has added to cart. We've all done it. We've added to cart and not decided to buy the product. You can send someone a reminder email a few hours afterwards to say, why don't you go and purchase that? Then we can say when someone has actually purchased for the first time, you can tell them how to use the product, let's say, or you can tell them to what they can get out of using the product further or benefits about using the product. You can then go and ask them for feedback or reviews. You can cross-sell on different products. And then you might have people who have bought multiple times. So you might have your VIPs. And again, you want to engage with them in a different way. And then further to that, where we'd be looking at people who might be churning or people who are about to churn, and you want to then come and get them back. And you can set up triggered emails for all of these. And so when people think about email marketing, they generally just think of the newsletter. But where I think that you could get a lot of value is setting up automated emails at certain points in the funnel like these, and Once you set them up, they exist for as long as you want them to, and the work is done, but you can get value and you can start engaging with your users over that time, okay? So one of the things that you want to do is, when thinking about your users, is to segment them based on where they are in the funnel or the life cycle of their product. So you want to set up certain segments such as leads, and this may be people who have not actually gone in and used your product or signed up, fully started to use your product, and so you may need to nurture them to move forward. Then you may have new users or new customers, people who have just used your product, so they may not be educated of exactly how to use it in the right way, and so you need to help them by sending certain messages to them. Then you have existing users, let's say, who are using the product. They may be getting value out of it, but you can also encourage them to be getting more value, and showing them certain steps of how to use the product. Power users you may have. And then you might have churned users. So people who are about to be churned, like about to not be a customer anymore or not be active anymore. And you might have people who have fully stopped using your product or fully stopped using your service. And these are people you can communicate to in a slightly different way. And so the reason why we're doing this is because you need to be sending different messages to people at different times. And what you also need to do here is to define what triggers make someone part of a segment. So some of them are very self-explanatory, but others, such as churns, may require some definition. So you want to say, maybe someone hasn't used the product for 30 days, that's what you define as churned. And so you want to just be clear what those points are, because then you can then set up certain triggers to make someone part of a segment, okay? Another thing you want to do is you want to set up certain triggers based on engagement, right? So you want to think about the segments that make the most sense for your company. But what you want to do is you want to think about who has actually engaged with some of your emails, who has engaged with some of your content. You don't want to be emailing people who have not engaged with your content for a very long time, for the very reason that it harms your deliverability and your open rates. And I will touch upon exactly why this is so important in just a minute. But you basically want to be messaging your engaged users. This is because the email service providers, they are giving you a score. They will give you a score. And if you're constantly emailing people who don't want to receive it, your score will go down, okay? So some of the segments that you can go about creating, and I've given you some example ones. So people who have signed up in the last 6 months, let's say, you could say people who have opened 25% or 30% of your emails. You can have people who have opened an email in the last 3 months or who have made a purchase in the last 6 months. These are people who I would like to think are probably the most engaged. Then you can have people maybe like 4 to 6 months ago, but not since. And then you can have users who have not opened an email. So just by creating these segments and actually sending out your emails in these type of groups will help you to, one, understand the engagement within those groups, and two, it will help you to remove the emails that you don't, that are potentially going to harm your deliverability. So that's just something to consider there as well. All right, so there are 2 types of email marketing campaigns. So we have the lifecycle emails, which are going to be triggered emails based on where a user is in their lifecycle or where they are in the funnel. And then you have broadcast emails. So these are manually sent. These will be like your newsletter, or you may have a new product that is launched. We also do have transactional emails, which may go out when someone has done certain actions on the site. Maybe like confirm your email. And we're not going to really discuss those there because these aren't necessarily, the transactional ones aren't necessarily for marketing purposes, but they are ones that you may need to consider. So today we're primarily going to focus on the lifecycle emails and the triggered emails that you can think about sending. All right, so the first lifecycle email that you could set up or drip sequence is a welcome email. All right, so when a new user or a new customer has signed up for your product or has just bought your product, what you want to do is send them a welcome. So welcome to the product. I've got an example here from Headspace, where they are explaining how you should start with the basics. They're also giving some details of the benefits of the product, and then also just talking about some scientific evidence of why, you know, Headspace would be good for you, let's say. And then they've got a call to action of get some Headspace, or, you know, start with the basics. All right. So there's some context around the product. Now you can start with a range of different emails. Often people will start off with like a welcome one from the founders, let's say, or they'll start off with a mission-driven email, which will, you know, talk about what the purpose of the company is. And so it's up to you what you want this to be. But what you want to think about is, if someone has just come in and they just signed up, you don't want to be too aggressive at the start. You want to give a bit more context about who you are, because this is all about relationships. And although sometimes when we are working on our company and we've got our users, sometimes it feels like it's a bit faceless, right? And so we want to basically build a relationship in some way and build some kind of rapport in some way. And often a welcome email can help you to do that, or a mission-driven email can help you to do that. And then you might want to use your, in this series, you might want to then say, maybe on day 3, let's do some customer development. So you may have assumptions around why someone has signed up for your product, but it's really good to just ask someone and to find out exactly what made you sign up for the product. And you can get some really good insights and some good feedback here. And if you are setting it up with one of the automated triggers, you can start to get automated parts of feedback. You can start to get feedback coming in by doing this for customer development. So if you've ever struggled to get feedback, or you've been told that you don't talk to your customers enough, then set up an automated email for your welcome series, which includes maybe what made you sign up, or is there anything that you were looking for with the product, you know? And then what you can then have is, you know, why the product is great, right? So maybe you're actually promoting the product and you're saying why the product is actually great, and and I apologize for the typo there, but you can say why the product is great. And now you may want to have your call to action to say, go and use the product. Here you go, right? So that is an example welcome series that you can go about having. So I'd suggest that you go about setting up a welcome drip sequence there, right? And then what we've got is an abandoned cart email. And so this is in the context of e-commerce, but we can also have an abandoned cart for someone who has maybe like a SaaS product, right? And someone has signed up, or they've done a free trial and they haven't fully gone and executed. So that, in a sense, is a form of abandoned cart, right? Where they haven't fully gone through with the full purchase. So that's an automated email that you could think about setting up. So regardless of your business, think about having an email where whatever that action is you want someone to go about taking, whether it's a purchase, a sign up, a subscription. If someone doesn't complete that action, then you want to think about a series of emails that you could send to them, which either remind them or, you know, give them some kind of benefit to get them to actually go in and complete that purchase, whatever that may be. All right. So
yeah, so I love this so far. By the way, I'm gonna stop you right here because I have actually a question. And then, by the way, anybody here that's watching, this is so full of content. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please put them in the chat. We actually have Sandra and Claire on our team that are actually answering questions. So Theo, actually, one thing that stood out to me in these slides is that, for example, if you go back to the welcome, it says like day 1, day 3, and day 6, right?
Yes.
So those are 3 emails in the span of 6 days. And then if you go to the abandoned one, it's like 4 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours. And so like you're getting a lot of emails from the same person. When do you know when to be like aggressive about it and when to not? And then, is getting 3 emails in the span of 6 days, you know, too much, too little? Does it depend on the business? I think that's something that a lot of people try to, you know, make sure to make behavior changes, but at the same time, you know, not seem like they're putting too much on the customer.
Really good question. So in regards to the cadence of messages that you should send out and what your cadence is going to look like, it's going to depend on your business. You have to think about what it is you want someone to do and how long they're probably going to need in order to make that kind of decision, right? So if we're looking at an abandoned cart email, the abandoned cart generally in e-commerce, someone might add to cart and then they might have forgotten, right? They might not have any real reason as to why they didn't complete the purchase, but they might have just forgotten. So you want to get them while they're in the context of buying. So 4 hours is not too short a period, right? And then the 24 hours is to kind of remind them that this is still, you could still go and make this purchase. And then we're saying, 48 hours, here's your discount. And what we are assuming here is that 2 days is probably the maximum amount of time when an abandoned cart can be sent out. You could obviously try it with a longer period of time, but that type of excitement to go and purchase might be gone. So there are certain emails which you may need to be more aggressive with, like the abandoned cart. And then you've got your welcome series. And your welcome series, you've got day 1, day 3, day 6. And that is just about like a reasonable period where you feel like you may need to educate or push someone from step to step. So you could do 1, 4, 7, 10 in terms of the days. You could also do 1, 5, 10, 15. It's kind of up to you what you feel comfortable with, and you don't want to be too aggressive with your emails, of course, and you want to make sure that your customers are going to be very happy. So you need to pay attention to the kind of unsubscription rates that you've got, but it's about you thinking about your user journey and how long someone takes in their journey to kind of complete an action, and then you can then create messages based on that journey. Yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's also really harps on the fact that you need to understand from the very beginning kind of your user journey, right? And kind of how to optimize that, right? So being very focused on those initial subscribers, what their actions are, and kind of going from there, which I think is really cool. For the abandoned cart thing, I usually see companies doing the whole email plus SMS and it's annoying because then I'm like, oh no, how did you get my number? But then it's like, oh, it actually does remind me because then I look back my texts. I mean, obviously this is purely email marketing, guys, FYI. But there are other ways to kind of also, find new ways to market your product. But this is a great way to optimize it via email. So please continue, Theo.
Okay, so that's the abandoned cart. And then the next one that you could think about is for your VIPs, right? So define what that metric is, what that number is that's going to make someone a VIP versus someone just a regular customer. And with that one, what you want to do is you want to think about, okay, what can we do to help our VIPs or the people who have used our product a lot or bought a lot from us a lot? How can we reward them? How can we build a closer relationship with them? And so the example that I've got here is, let's say someone has made their 5th purchase, and that's what you are defining as someone becoming a VIP. So on that 30th day, you would then, that's when your trigger would go out, and you would then send, let's say, a thank you message. So you might say, thank you for using our product, really appreciate it. And there may be no ask. And then maybe 15 days later, and you can see that I've left a little bit more of a time period here where it's 15 days. And that's because we don't need to be emailing our VIPs every day. We definitely don't want to over email them because we want to keep them happy. So I've left a larger period here. And then what we're trying to do is maybe giving them a VIP discount. So saying, here's your, and I've used example here, here's 35% off, so you can come and buy from us again, right? So you're getting special rewards for using our product in a certain way. And so because we're thinking about this in the context of the life cycle, not everyone would get this message. And so you're creating a better experience for your VIP users. And then let's say 60 days, right after that 5th purchase, you might want to ask for a testimonial or a review or something that shows, okay, this VIP really does love us as a company and wants to talk about us. So you can pick what you want this to be, and it might be access to an exclusive webinar, it might be merchandise that you want to give to them. So it's up to you what you want to offer your VIPs, but just think, we need to be rewarding our best customers. And so that's why you want to have a drip sequence in place to ensure that they are getting communication and you are engaging with them as well. You don't want to forget them. They're a very important group. And then what we've got here is the win back, right? So this is going to be pertinent for everyone here in terms of retention is always an issue. churn is always an issue. And once a user has gone, it's very difficult to get them back. So what you want to think about is, one, what is that trigger point that make that we're defining as someone being churned? And then two, what can we potentially do to get them back, right? So let's just say day 30, after someone has canceled their subscription, you might want to send them a message saying, we missed you. Here is, I'm using the example of Skillshare. They've given the next month off for 99 cents. So what you're doing is you're saying, we've missed you, we want you to come back in a certain way, and you may offer them a discount, you may offer them something that's going to bring them back in, right? And we're hopeful that that's going to be enough to bring them back in. Then potentially on day 35, right, we're saying, here are some new features that we've added to the product. So maybe there's something that previously that customer or that user, they didn't have the experience that they wanted. There were features that were missing and they wanted those features. And now we have those features. So potentially that's something that will bring them back. And then what you can also then do is a few days after that, if they're still not coming back, you can potentially do some more customer development. So you could send them a survey on why they canceled their subscription. And this may give you insight into what you were missing within your product, what you needed to add in, and then you then get clarity. So again, we're doing customer development. We're continuing to want to understand about our users, whether they are with us or whether they're not, because it's going to help us to move forward and to improve our product in the future. So these are examples of sequences that you could use, and I would recommend setting these up as a minimum to ensure that you've at least are reaching users at different points in the cycle. So if I just start again, you've got an abandoned cart. This may be someone who isn't a full user and you want them to be a user. Then next up, we have the welcome for someone who is actually a user. And then we would have a VIP who is very much a user that we enjoy, and someone that who's engaged with us a lot. And then even further down, what we have is a churned user, someone who is no longer looking to use the product, and we want to try and get them back in. So we've got emails for the entire life cycle of a user or a customer. All right. And one of the tips that I have in terms of creating content for this is for you to just think about all of these different stages in the funnel, and for you to write down what are the objections that we need to overcome in order to get someone to the next stage in that funnel. So with the abandoned cart, it may be there's not enough trust or the price is too expensive. So what we've done is we've got those two objections, and we've tried to then give them a reminder email and maybe a discount to try and push them forward. So think about your life cycle of your emails, write down all the objections, and then try and create some content to try and get them to the next stage in the funnel. All right, so I always believe that inspiration is key to doing great things. And so I suggest that you take a look at these two sites, right? So reallygoodemails.com. It has a range of emails in a number of different categories, different types of emails that you can then go and cite, and you can use them for inspiration. So look at, if you're thinking about a welcome email, go and look at 5 welcome emails, see which ones are the best, take some of the best things from them, and then implement that into your own email. Then what we've got is pageflows.com. And here they go through different flows, but they also have lots of emails from companies in different ways. And it actually pulls in a lot of their emails, not just their trigger-based emails, but also their newsletters. So you can look at them, they're all compiled, and then you can get more inspiration to help you with your email. So have a look at those, and then as a starting point, and then you can move forward, and it will make it much easier for you to go and create those emails.
Yeah. Theo, so
sure.
This is really great, and I love that we went through all of the types of drip sequences and some email inspiration. We actually have 2 portfolio companies that are here with us today that have asked questions, and would love to address them live. So the first one comes from Martha Hernandez from MadeBoss. Team, any support or resources read best messaging approach? We need help clarifying our offering, given we've expanded our product services before we go into campaign mode. Is there anything particular there that you can offer? And by the way, you can obviously say we're going to address this later on in the presentation, or we can talk about it later in the Q&A.
Okay, so that's a good question there. So in terms of if I'm just right, you're trying to find out what messaging can work for your audience. Is that correct?
So yes, because in her specific situation, she has to clarify her offering since they have expanded their product services before going into campaign mode.
Okay, great. So I think this is an opportunity for potentially customer development at the start, where you can use the emails to maybe try and test out certain messaging and to see if that resonated. You can also go and use the emails to try and have conversations. And you also got to remember, you looking at the email performance is an indicator of whether there was clarity there. So for example, if you are having a welcome series and you see that people are not going through and doing certain actions, maybe there's not enough clarity. And so potentially you could A/B test that with different types of messaging to see if people then get to that type of goal. Another thing you could do if you haven't, you don't want to email those users just yet, is you can maybe test out on paid social, for example, and test out different ad copy there, which would be in your emails or the type of themes that will go into your emails, and see if there's clarity there. And then you can then move that in. So if you don't necessarily have the user base to be able to send out the emails and to get data back on that, what you can do is you can potentially use some paid social, or you can use like a blog post that may have worked really well, and seeing if there was clarity there or people were able to understand it. So all of email content is just content that has existed in another place, and you're just using it in the content. So a clever way to see if there is clarity is to test it on those different channels where you can maybe, the feedback loop is a bit quicker, and then you can then put that into your emails. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, would it make sense for her to also maybe like poll or survey some of her, earlier users, or some of the people that maybe might be her brain trust herself, and just kind of ask them questions to see what works? I'm just curious myself.
Yeah, I would go about doing that. So in those first few days, you could maybe set up an email that says, we'd love to have a conversation. And on day 3, let's say, would you be able to can we set up a call? I would love to spend 15 minutes talking through our product or what we're offering. And you could also add in a survey. So maybe after 5 or 7 days, can you fill in a survey for us? And another thing that I have done as well is I've asked the question, which is, does the product solve all the things that you were looking for it to solve, or is there clarity there? So you can use the email to maybe ask those type of questions, or to get surveys, or to try and get someone on the phone and to use those people as your brain trust. But your early users are definitely a great source of people to pull from. And another tip is, if that's really important for you, then maybe offer like a prize or entering into a draw if they answer the survey. So you're more likely to get a better response rate if you do that. So that's something we try.
Awesome, Theo. Thank you. And then the second question is from Derek from Ops Under. So can you please go over best practices for cold email marketing? I think you may touch on this later in the presentation, but any best practices, tips, tricks, all of that. I feel like a lot of people here would benefit.
Okay, sure. So I'm going to touch upon email marketing a bit later, and I'll go through a few tips there and best practices that I think.
Awesome. Okay, floor's all yours.
All right, great stuff. All right, and so here are some email automation tools which I've used over the years, and I found to be very, very good. And all of these emails allow for trigger-based emails, so lifecycle emails, and so they allow you to set up certain events on your site. Some of them will require you to put like a pixel into your or a little script onto your site, and then you'll be able to track the movements of your, not the movements, but track the events, or see if someone has done certain events, and you can then send out emails based on that. So these ones are really good, and I would recommend having a look. And there's a variety for different purposes, so see what fits your purposes the best. And then if you're doing e-commerce, so I have a different section for that, because there's a lot more data that sometimes is pulled in for some of these trigger-based emails. So you can also use Klaviyo, Rejoiner and Drip. These are also good ones. And yeah, these are some of the ones that I recommend using. And now I'm going to get onto the subject of deliverability. So deliverability is something that you've probably heard about when in reference to email, and you probably asked the question, why is this so important? And the reason why it's so important is that if you get banned from your if you get banned, you can't send emails, and therefore you can't communicate with your customers, and therefore you lose a really big potential revenue source and engagement channel, right? So you have to be really careful. And the reason is because we've all had spam emails come into our inbox, selling a variety of things. And that has meant that email providers are a lot stricter. And so you need to think about your email deliverability and to ensure that you do not fall foul of these services by taking the wrong types of actions. All right. And so you want to maintain a really good reputation. And I'm going to give some details on how you can go about doing that. So there are a few things that you may want to look at. So you've got your spam score. So is my reputation considered to be spam? Am I a spammer effectively in the eyes of some of these email service providers? What you can do is you can go into a few of these tools, Glock apps, mailtester.com, and those will, Mailtester will, you'll send an email to them. Glock apps will check if your score is considered to be spam and whether you have a bad reputation there. So have a look at those ones. They're good, and just check your score. Even if you're not going to do anything massive with it, just check your score, see where you're at. Next one is inbox placement. So for all the Gmail users out there, we all know that we have our different segments. If you're not a Gmail user, then what you have is you have I think 4 different boxes, like promotions, updates, forums, and then you have your main inbox. Your goal as email marketeer is to get into the main inbox. It's not always possible to do that, but your goal is to try and get there. And you can use this tool to see whether your emails are going to go into the main, whether into the promotions, the updates, or the forums. And where we don't want to be, it's the spam box. So that's again where you can go and check. And so I encourage you to just have a look at that. You can send out some test emails through there, and then it will see where your emails are likely to land. And then what we also want to see is our blacklists. So you've got MX Toolbox. It's a really good service for a lot of things to do with email deliverability, but take a look at that and see if you're on any blacklists. If you're on blacklist, you're going to need to take a certain approach to try and get off those blacklists. So not all is not lost, but at the same time, you're going to need to know at least we are in a blacklist. And so we need to work backwards from there. And then the service that I recommend you use is Google Postmaster Tools, which you put onto your site, and then it will give you a full look at whether you're going into the spam, your reputation. You just get a good context for a lot of things. So install that. It doesn't take too long to install it. Get your developer to do it, and then you should have a lot more context going forward. Then there are some technical acronyms which you don't necessarily know what they mean, but at the same time, you need to know that they are set up properly. So we have SPF, we have DKIM, and we have DMARC. So most tools that you use, like your MailChimps, your SendGrids, whatever you're using, will probably have your SPF and your DKIM set up, but you need to ensure that they are set up because those are like fundamental. And by having those, you're more likely for your emails to reach the inbox and for them to be authenticated, okay? And so most of the SPF, DKIM usually set up. The DMARC is not usually set up, but this is one of the really important ones to have set up because this will then make you more likely to get into the right the inboxes and to the right places and not go into spam, okay? So you can check using these tools to see if you actually have them set up. And I think there is some help to actually getting them set up using these tools, but then specifically the DMARC generator, you can use that and then you can set up your DMARC and then you'll be in a much better position to get into people's inboxes, okay? And not be in spam. Always use double opt-in. So when we sign up for any tool, when we say confirm the email address, the reason why we're doing that is because people can have spelling mistakes, simple accident. Sometimes people can put in fake emails. And if you are constantly emailing them and getting bounces, then, and that's a metric I'm going to discuss in just a minute, then your score is going to go down. It's not going to look great. And then you're going to struggle. So that's just something that you want to consider there. Double opt-in makes things much easier. Don't buy any lists. if you've ever bought a list, it's not actually that great in general for like conversions I've found over the years, but also it's really bad for the score because most people will see you as someone they don't necessarily know, and they're hitting that spam button quite regularly, and that causes some problems for you as well. So don't buy a list. That's really a no-no in email marketing. Don't do it. And then we've got subdomains. So we are talking about email marketing, but there are also transactional emails that go out. So the reason why you should consider using a subdomain for these two emails is because if you make a mistake with your email marketing, which happens, or you send to like you get a bad score, let's say, or your reputation goes down, you don't want that to prevent your product from existing, and those transactional emails that need to go out for your product to actually work well, you don't want that to be affected. So it allows you a little bit more flexibility if you've got separation between those two. And you might see these from, maybe it says like mail dot service, and that's what you might see, and that's the difference there. So consider using subdomains. It can help you to separate things out, and so you can take more risks, or you can try different things with your marketing as well. If you have a new IP, if you're going into a new tool, so all of the tools, if you are not doing email marketing right now and you decide, want to set this up today, I liked what Theo was saying, don't go in and start sending to 100,000 people tomorrow, because what that's going to be, what's going to look like is maybe you're a spammer, or maybe you're, there's no period in which you've demonstrated like some process in which this is how many emails you're going to send. You're just looking like, you're going to spam a lot of people. So that's not good practice. And what you need to do is you need to warm it up. So SendGrid have given an example. They say day 150, day 200, day 3, 500, then it doubles over time. And then if you're sending 4 million emails a day, then you probably need to wait like 17 days before you can get there. So just follow a consistent warm up schedule there, and think about that if you've got a new IP address, new domain, or you're just starting with a new email service provider. And now onto some of the metrics. So we all have heard about open rate, click-through rate. I'm going to give some benchmarks on those in just a second. But what we also have is like delivery metrics. So this is going to be how many emails actually were delivered. What was the bounce rate that you had? What was the email, the inbox placement, the spam rate, right? And then we go into the engagement metrics. Metrics such as like your unsubscribe rate. What is actually the people churning on your list? So a little bit further down the funnel, thinking about like your kind of conversions. Then what we've got is like number of conversions, conversion rate, revenue per subscriber, let's say. Is that growing over time? And you basically want to graph out a lot of these and see, are we improving? Are we not improving them? And then you can see if you're doing the right things, if you're doing the wrong things, all right? So think about some of these metrics. It's not just open rate and click-through rate. Everything needs to be around, conversions and how much revenue you're getting from your users. That's really, that's the main goal that we've got. But then there's some other ones before, which are, if they are not working, you're not going to be able to get conversions in the long run. So you need to consider those ones as well. And here is just an example from a Rejoiner, which just demonstrates some of the other emails that you could be looking at. So you've got subscriber LTV, for example. You've got length of customer inactivity on the far side. So a lot of metrics that you could be considering. And we will, I generally will think about a lot of these metrics when thinking about email marketing. And then I've just provided you some benchmarks. So regardless of what industry you're in, you should be looking at your open rate between 19 to 26%, right? That is what we have seen in terms of that, the average industry. Obviously you want to be better than that, but for the time being, if this is what you're seeing, 19 to 26, that's not bad going. And if you are seeing much lower than that, it might be that you need to kind of clean your lists because you're emailing the wrong people, and those people will never open, and they are harming your open rates. So if you're really seeing low open rates, think about cleaning your list, and then you can try different things in order to get you that kind of you can move forward because you've got a better open rate, and that's being considered. And then there's going to be A/B testing as well. So I'm going to touch upon A/B testing just a second. And what we've also got are some tools which just help you with headlines. So if you've ever heard of Upworthy, I think it is. They test lots, and BuzzFeed as well. They test lots and lots of headlines at once to see which one works, and then they push out the majority of their content. So you can use something like some of these tools here in order for you to see whether your subject line is going to work, if it's using some of the right ingredients for a good subject line. And then here are this is just general in terms of A/B testing and some of the things that you can go and test. So I've got here in terms of subject lines, you can put a customer's name in the subject versus not. You can ask questions and have a statement, for example, have a long one versus a very short one. In terms of formatting, plain text is really good for email marketing. It's not spoken about as much because HTML emails look beautiful and they show the whole brand, but at the same time, plain text is probably more likely to get you in that first inbox because that's the type of emails that we all get. So maybe you want to test plain text versus HTML, bullet points versus paragraphs. That's what you could test. Maybe I'll put this in two groups. Maybe you can test like GIF versus image or GIF versus a video, whatever you want. And then you can test out like different types of CTAs as well. Now, in terms of the average click-through rate, 2.62 is the metric that we're seeing. So you want to be testing different things to try and improve that and get over that. And then what you're also seeing is like bounce rate. So if you're getting higher than 2% on your bounce rate, then you need to clean your list again, or you might need to use one of these tools such as Never Bounce or Validity. You put your emails in there and they will see whether your emails are likely to be valid or not, and therefore you can remove all the ones that are not. So try that if you're seeing quite high bounce rates. High bounce rates will lead to like a bad reputation over time. So you want to resolve that. Spam rates, 0.02. So it feels like a very, smaller, like a quite a high bar in terms of if you were to get 1 out of 10, that's a high spam rate. You're definitely over that, right? So you want to be thinking about your spam rate, and if your spam rate is too high, maybe you're emailing the wrong people, or you may want to try putting your unsubscribe button at the top and make it very clear you can unsubscribe versus pressing that spam button, because you don't want people to press the spam button. As you can see, it doesn't take much for you to get over 0.02 of people pressing the spam button. So try and think of, you can clean your list, but you can also put your unsubscribe button higher. And again, 0.5 for the unsubscribe rate. So you want to be getting below all of these in terms of your email benchmarks. And then now I'm going to just touch a little bit on some of the cold email outreach. If we've got any questions on the metrics, I'm sure we can ask them just in a second. So my tips are to always be human, right? So know to whom it may concern, always be human, try and speak like you're speaking to someone, another human. That's where you're more likely to get the responses. Most high end executives, they are not necessarily writing super formal letters because they're very busy, and so they speak to people, and so you should try and speak to them, and that's more likely to get responses. So be relevant. So always have at least one sentence relevant to them, whatever that may be. It could be about their business, it might be about them or something that you've read about. Always try and put in something, and try and put in value as well. And that's the main thing. If you're going to help in any way, you can do that. The example here, this is talking about some ideas that may help. So for example, your Facebook campaign for engaged 20-somethings sends prospects to the questionnaire. Maybe you want to get them talking about money. So if you give someone a tip, if you give them value in any email, especially when you're trying to get something from them, you're trying to get a response, the more you can help, the more likely you're going to get a response, because it's less of a I'm begging you for your help or begging you for a response, and more like reciprocation. Yeah. So just think about providing value in everything. Try and keep it short. Really long emails, if I see them, for example, it scares me. I don't know how to respond. Is it going to take me half an hour to respond to it? All right, I'm just not going to. So if you keep it short, you make it easy for someone to respond, you're probably going to get more responses. And then this is just something I've seen over time, which is if you can give any kind of personalization, then this is going to help. So rather than sending to loads and loads of people who are not going to respond to you, maybe send to a small amount and create something for them. whether it's a landing page that they go to and it's personalized, sees their logo. Maybe it's the product in action, and you can send them to a YouTube video and it shows that product in action that you're trying to sell, or you know, whatever it may be. Just think about, if you can try and personalize stuff, go that extra mile, then you're more likely to get a response, because someone is seeing their product in action, or they're seeing the value already, versus you're showing rather than telling, right? So I think that's always a good tip, and I've seen that help with the response rates. In terms, and then here are some other examples that we've got here. So providing value that you might want to offer. And then there's one of the tools that you can go about using, Persist IQ, which is a really good tool, has a generator. So it helps with your series of emails. So you can go on there and have some example emails with templates that you can then just put in for your company or for your goals, and it will help you to come up with a good series. And these are some of the email tools which I recommend. So they're not the same as the email marketing ones. The reason being, those email marketing tools are, they require opt-in, whereas the cold emails don't require opt-in. So you can do your prospecting, you can get your leads in, and then you can put them in here, set up some sequences or automation, and that then can then go out and you can see your responses coming in. You want to be seeing 5 to 10% response rate, and that just includes any kind of response. It doesn't necessarily mean a yes or a no, it's just a response. And that is ultimately your goal from a cold email, is to get a response, and then you can build on that. And ultimately you're trying to get a response so you can book a call, or you can book the next step in your sales funnel. Yeah. And yeah, that's pretty much me. I hope you found that helpful. I'd love to hear your questions. And yeah, I hope you can go away and take on some of these tips.